Why do people jump? It's a simple yet disturbing question that hit me as I watched this heart-pounding scene in a silent voice. That's when I realized that in visual storytelling, a jump often means more than just a jump. But whether it's a jump, a step, or a fall, one thing's for sure: the character never lands in the same place as they were before, for better or worse. But what do jumps and falls really mean in stories, and why do they make us feel so jumpy? Welcome to Feel It First, and today we're trying to figure out what Shouya and Shoko were actually doing on that ledge, because this scene hit me way too hard. I remember watching this climactic scene with a deep sense of dread, as if a heavy weight was threatening to pull my heart down along with Shoko herself. So where do we even start? Let's go with the flow of the scene itself, using Shouya and Shoko's actions as a three-stage analogy to explore the concept of the jump and the fall. The run-up mirrors Shouya's frantic dash to the balcony, and this is where we answer a fundamental question. What kind of jump are Shouya and Shoko making? I noticed there are at least 6 types of jumps and falls in stories, something I like to call the 6 leaps of legends. First up, we have jumps of faith. Remember Indiana Jones stepping out into thin air, trusting that an invisible bridge would catch him? Or Neo's rooftop jump, where he has to trust Morpheus about how the Matrix really works. Obviously, Shouya and Shoko don't fit here, but the next category makes things a little more complicated, and those are falls embracing chaos. The Joker's infamous drop off the building is a chilling embrace of chaos. He falls laughing and doesn't care if Batman saves him or not. Pure anarchy, definitely not Shouya or Shoko's style. But how about jumps of self-discovery? I really like this one. For Miles Morales, he leaps off the building as he embraces his own identity, but his fall isn't a failure, but a new Spider-Man rising to take hold of his destiny. And when Kencho strips off his facade and takes that leap off the building, it symbolizes a choice to leave his false corporate identity behind and embrace a new one. This reminds me of a leap I made during the first week of officer training during my national service. They called it the confidence jump, but standing on that 16-foot platform staring at the icy cold water below at 4:30 in the morning, man, I really didn't feel so confident. But I took that jump anyway, and it forced me to decide who I was becoming. Not someone fearless, but someone willing to act in the face of fear. So is this Shouya and Shoko? Yeah, maybe a little, but the next category makes it hard to decide, and those are jumps of heroism. I gotta be honest, the first person that came to mind was David Martinez. David knows exactly how his story will end when he stepped into that building to save Lucy. Yet he still charges into a foolhardy battle against Adam Smasher because saving Lucy matters more than surviving. So his fall isn't just brave but sacrificial. And that's the same with Ymir as she leaps from Utgard Castle into a horde of titans, saving Historia at the cost of exposing her secret and possibly her life. However, not every heroic fall is noble, and not every hero saves the world. Sometimes it's just about saving the one you love. Hodaka embodies the anti-heroism fall when he doesn't fall to save the world, but to steal Hina back from it, even if everyone else pays the price. It's not selfless, it's not rational, but that's why it hits so hard. It's reckless, defiant, beautiful love falling straight through the sky. And finally, here's Shouya, falling over that balcony ledge with one final pull without a thought for himself. In that moment, what matters most is not his own safety, but Shoko's life. His courage is guided by atonement and the desperate hope that he can save someone he's grown to truly care about. But how did he acquire such courage out of nowhere? We'll get to that in just a minute, but there's one more category that applies to Shouya, and those are jumps of transformation. The most obvious example would be Gandalf's plunge into Khazad-dûm after fighting the Balrog. He returns stronger and more powerful as Gandalf the White. And don't forget about Bruce Wayne, who fell broken and battered into the pit, but climbed back out with a super risky jump. He emerged not just as a butt-kicking Batman, but as a transformed Bruce Wayne. For Shouya, his fall from that balcony is transformative and reshapes him forever. It symbolizes the death of his former self, the boy who was cruel, who ran away from responsibility, and the birth of the man he truly wants to be. Shouya doesn't rise from the fall physically stronger, but he returns with something much more powerful, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So Shouya definitely fits in here, but unfortunately, Shoko's jump is a fall of demise and tragedy. Gollum clutching his precious as he falls to his fiery end, Mace Windu betrayed and falling into darkness, Darth Maul plummeting after his arrogance. Shoko's jump is heartbreaking precisely because it feels final. Her leap isn't about transformation or bravery, but she steps onto the balcony's ledge not just because she wanted to disappear, but because of something deeper. Something I call the give up, which answers the question, what motivates a person to jump? To fully understand why Shoko jumps, it's helpful to look at something called choice theory, developed by psychiatrist Dr. William Glasser. According to Dr. Glasser, every action we take is an attempt to fulfill one or more of our 5 basic needs: survival, love and belonging, freedom, fun, or power. Each of those needs drives our decisions and behaviors, influencing everything from small daily choices to profound life-altering decisions. But what does this have to do with Shoko? At first glance, taking one's life seems baffling, even irrational. But at its core, this act of desperation stems from an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. It's the feeling of being trapped in a pit so deep, people simply can't see a way out. Paradoxically, ending it all provides people with something they desperately want: the power to end their own suffering, to regain control, even if in the most tragic way possible. A permanent solution to what may be a temporary problem. In Shoko's case, it's not that nobody loves her, she just thinks that nobody should. Her entire life, she was made to feel like an unwanted liability, blamed for inconveniencing others and causing trouble. She felt responsible as she watched Shouya getting bullied, and later witnessed him losing friends again because of her. When Shouya got into trouble with Naoka, when he fell down the slope during their date, when he awkwardly struggled to pretend everything was fine, Shoko blamed herself each time. Each event, no matter how small or accidental, reinforced her internal narrative: I am powerless, and everyone suffers because of me. To be honest, I felt something like that too. When I was a kid growing up in Singapore, I got punished many times by my dad, back when caning was still the norm. I don't even remember what I did wrong, probably something like not finishing my math homework, but what I do remember was what I said to myself afterward, sitting alone in my room. I'm stupid, I'm useless, I can't do anything right. I would cry and hit my head with my hands, not because of the punishment, but because I believed I was a failure. And that was just over homework, but Shoko was made to feel like a failure in almost every aspect of her life. That kind of pain doesn't just sit quietly, it grows until taking the fall feels like the only way to stop dragging others down. But then, Shouya caught her, and in that instant he shattered that narrative, because for the first time, someone met her exactly where she was, in that terrifying moment between life and death, exactly where she needed him most. I think giving support isn't about showing up how we want to, but showing up how others need us to. The best way to understand this idea comes from the tragic scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Gwen Stacy falls and Peter dives after her. Some catches, like Shouya's, save a life, but others, like Peter's, end one. And when we can't catch someone, we tend to spend the rest of our lives trying to catch the next. Not every jump leads to transformation. Sometimes you fall, and that's it. But the memory of that fall will reshape everything that comes after. Gwen's death is a reminder of a simple but brutal truth, that in helping someone, it's important to meet someone where they are, not where we wish they still were, and not at the bottom after they're already broken. That's a lesson that Shoko's sister Yuzuru learned the hard way. You see, Yuzuru wanted to protect her sister from giving up hope. By taking photos of dead animals and leaving those images around, she wanted to warn Shoko of the ugliness of death, its finality, its horror. But instead of sparking revulsion and horror, Yuzuru's photos made death feel ordinary, familiar, something that lived just around the corner of daily life. And when something scary becomes familiar, the fear of it begins to fade. It's the same reason why combat veterans who face death regularly on the battlefield often come home with a higher risk of succumbing to their trauma. But while desensitization pushed Shouko closer to the edge, it did something entirely different to Shouya. In fact, that's exactly how Shouya managed to step up and become a hero. You might remember that Shouya and his friends used to jump from bridges when they were kids in what Shouya called daily daredevil tournaments. Was that even necessary to the story? The answer lies in something I call the heroism matrix. Imagine a chart where every act of courage and kindness could be measured. On the vertical axis, we have virtue, the intention behind the action, the moral compass that decides why we move at all. On the horizontal axis, we have valor, the raw courage it takes to act, especially when it's hard. It's the willingness to risk or sacrifice something to live out those principles when the stakes are highest. But not every courageous act is heroic, and not every good intention results in action. So now imagine a matrix, two lines crossing in the dark to give us 4 quadrants. At the bottom left, that's the bystander, and a perfect example would be Zeri, the ancient elven mage from Freeran. Despite her immense power and knowledge, she often chooses inaction. Her detachment stems from centuries of existence, leading her to view the world with a sense of apathy. She does whatever tickles her fancy, taking on disciples on a whim and not caring much about the state of humanity. This reluctance to engage despite her capabilities positions her as a quintessential bystander. Now what if you've got the intention but not the courage? That's the idealist. An example would be Armin Arlet in early seasons of Attack on Titan. He's got intelligence and a strong moral compass. However, his physical weakness and self-doubt often hinder him from taking decisive action. In the early episodes, Armin's hesitation in critical moments underscores his placement in the idealist quadrant, full of conviction but paralyzed by fear. He knows what's right, but sometimes he just can't move. Now flip that and you've got the daredevil. Probably the best example in recent anime is Denji in the early episodes of Chainsaw Man. Given an immortal body and freedom from poverty, he throws himself into danger with no hesitation. But his motivations are raw: food, boobs, and survival. Denji has courage in spades, but no moral compass to steer it. That's the daredevil, or action, no direction, and that can be just as dangerous as doing nothing at all. Finally, when valor is high and virtue is high, you land in the top right. That's the hero. And honestly, I can't think of many better examples than Kamado Tanjiro. He fights demons to protect the innocent, often against overwhelming odds. His courage is steady, not showy. His virtue is active, not passive. And what makes Tanjiro a hero isn't just that he fights, it's why he fights, who he fights for, and how he never lets go of his humanity in the process. When what you believe and what you do are in perfect harmony, that's being a hero. The important thing to note is that these aren't fixed identities. Maybe you were a bystander last year, a daredevil last week, an idealist yesterday. They are states of being, places we move through, stumble into, or grow out of. And maybe that's what heroism really is. Not just valor, not just virtue, but the choice to give everything, knowing it might not be enough, but doing it anyway. Shouya's leap isn't just a physical act, but the moment he finally becomes someone whose courage and care align. His daredevil antics were never ends in themselves. Every bridge, every river, every reckless dive gave him the courage for something bigger. And maybe that's why his daredevil past isn't just background noise, but the runway to his redemption. And that's what the silent voice quietly urges us to see. So before you condemn yourself, pause. You might think that you're too far gone, that you'll never be forgiven. But your mistakes, they don't disqualify you, they prepare you. Because one day, you'll walk beside someone else who's breaking too. And when that moment comes, you'll know what to say. Not because you watched my freaking YouTube video, but because you lived it. And that might be the reason you're still here. So maybe jumping isn't about falling or flying, maybe it's about choosing. Choosing who you'll be before you make your way down. So choose the right kind of jumps, and you'll find that when you fall, that's when you'll finally rise. This video is part of my running anthology called Kill Annie in My Heart, so if you've enjoyed this one, and I'm sure you'll love this one right here.